Good morning and welcome to the Coffee Table Talks. Hi, how are you? Wherever it is that you might be viewing from, LinkedIn Live, Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I do Twitch just because I like Twitch. That's why. Today with us we have Tim Crothers, who I am so excited that you're here. You have no idea. Okay, maybe you do, because we did 30 minutes worth of Rachel being really excited to ask you how's everything in your life right now. It's great. And today we have Levy. So glad to see Levy. If you guys have been following the Coffee Table Talks for a while, then you know that Levy comes in and comes out due to work-life balance things. And today the balance worked out in my favor.
Yep. In the favor of the hats.
And in favor of hats. With me, as always, my co-host, Will McCullen. Hi,
Howdy.
Will. The program manager at the IT Center of Excellence at Pima Community College in Tucson, Arizona. If this is your first time meeting me, congratulations. It's going to be a lot really fast. My name is Rachel Arnold. I'm a human API with SecureNation, and I live so far south that you don't need to worry about it. Oh, and hey, look, you guys, Meg. Oh, Meg, we got to turn your camera off, Bebs.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
Good. You're on live because I pushed your thing. I'm so glad that.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, so if you guys have been getting messages from Meg Jet, Meg is my new sidekick and bestie. So she's doing a lot of effort on part of Rachel. So hang out with Meg. She's cool people. Meg, I'm going to push your button off. Love you.
Great. She's just come on board and you're already pushing her buttons.
I am.
That probably started before she was on board. It's all right.
She's my official chat moderator. Which, speaking of chat, we might want to actually pull that up too. That might be handy. There we go. So if you guys chat from LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, it will show up here on the scrolling side. So try not to embarrass yourself or your family. Anyhow, Tim, thank you so much for coming to hang out with us today. So because I don't want to mistitle you because it's changed recently. Or has it? It has. I don't know. I just always call you Tim Crothers the Awesome. So when I first met you, you were the director of cybersecurity, I believe, at Target, and then a CISO, and then, or never was actually called a CISO, but you were a CISO? I don't know. And then now you're over with, then you went Mandiant, then Google, because Google bought Mandiant.
Right.
Great. So where are we at now? What's the title?
So I was the VP at Target. Then I went to CISO at Mandiant. Mandiant got bought. So now Google does levels differently. So I'm a director now at Google. I'm just recently moved to a group we call Office of the CISO. And it's folks like myself who are longtime practitioners, and we partner with our customers to help them be successful.
I like it. So Office.
I focused on retail for probably obvious reasons.
Yeah, no, it has nothing to do with experience or anything like that. So, no, they totally.
Sure, random.
Yeah. Super random. They were just like, and you were like, wow, how well does that fit? That's great, you guys. Very cool. So I got to first meet Tim whenever I was a new little baby bird with SecureNation. Much like Meg. I was like Meg. I was like so fresh and new and hadn't had my soul shattered yet. Very optimistic.
I'm sorry to have shattered it for you, Rachel. I really am.
You didn't. You kept it from being completely shattered because there was still good in the world, and its name was Tim Crothers. No, and I was a new baby bird, and I was like, cool. I'm gonna set up this meeting for my boss with Tim Crothers, and it was bad. It was a bad meeting. It was so bad. Let's not even lie. It was just oil and water. It was so bad. And I was like, well, there went my chance at having a cool friend. And I woke up one morning and I was like, no, you know what? F that. I am going to be friends with this human because this human is awesome and I don't care. And I annoyed him politely until he succumbed to my personality.
Program use APIs.
I was like, I'm never going to give you up. Never going to let you. It was like that. And then you introduced me to GurCon, which was awesome. The very first time, well, it's still awesome, but the very first time I ever went was awesome. And I got to like meet all these people that I had been connecting with and chatting with. And it was such a very cool experience. So had you been going to GurCon since inception? And how did GurCon get started? Don't you know some of this story and history?
I do know some of it. Yeah, I know some of it. So Chris and Jamie originally started it with another partner back when Chris was at Spectrum Health in Grand Rapids. And then Chris and Jamie bought it out and took over. I don't think I attended year one, but I think I've been there most years since year two. Once in a while, schedule conflicts and I can't make it out. But yeah, it's a great conference. Highly recommend it. You know, lots of innovative thinking, which is always useful in our industry.
I like how you say innovative thinking and then you try not to crack to it. You guys just got to experience it. Now there was something that was like a sister conference that I had heard about but never gone to, and it was more centric to the group at Target. Is that correct? BurCon?
Well, yeah. So what happened was it ran 3 years, I think it ran. And, it just, especially in the corporate world, because corporate was sponsoring it, it's complicated. But yeah, ran for 3 years in the Twin Cities, which is where Target's headquartered. But it wasn't, by no means it wasn't just Target. It was UHG, Medtronic, one of the cool things about the Twin Cities in particular is there's just this preponderance of large Fortune 50s headquartered there. And there's a really strong, thriving cybersecurity community there.
Yeah. I've actually hung out in the Twin Cities quite a bit whenever in my past life I repaired commercial dishwashers and laundries and serviced things on a chemical level with Ecolab.
Sure.
They're housed there. So all of their training, you would go like 5 or 6 times, depending on whatever your career path was, and go for pretty in-depth training where I'd be away from my family for like a week at a time and just dump all of this mechanical knowledge into my brain. So I'm not going to say that I could probably start my own electrician and plumbing company, but I could probably start my own electrician and plumbing company. It'd be all right.
So Mandiant and stuff, you've seen and experienced quite a bit, right?
Just a bit. Yep, just a bit.
Yeah, weren't you with this isn't your first time around though with the folks over at Mandiant?
Right. Yeah, I've done 2 tours of duty is how I like to say it at Mandiant. Very, one of the fun things about Mandiant, Kevin, the CEO for Mandiant, is pretty well known. He's ex-Air Force, right? And there's a huge preponderance of ex-service folks, which is awesome. First time I was there, I bet it was close to 60% of folks had served. And then probably a little less lately, but still high percentage of folks who've served, which is awesome.
Very cool.
But that gives you kind of a unique perspective because you've been Mandiant has been in the thick of so many recoveries, battles, efforts, things of that sort.
It has, we were talking in the pre-show a little bit, conversation, funny enough, this is year 40 of my career. I started my career in '84 as a night Basically, I was at a credit union. This is while I was in college. I was the night computer operator doing reel-to-reel tape backups on the mainframe, and which was a great job for college. But I moved over into security at '94, and the first time I went to Mandiant, so this would have been tail end of 2011. I'd been in the industry for a while. I naively thought that we as practitioners understood how to defend our organizations, and it was just a matter of putting that all together. I don't actually believe that anymore. In that, I think we know bits and pieces of it. Think we know parts. And let me be clear, there are so many people out there doing just amazing, amazing work, right? But for me, as an engineer, by nature, the hard data shows, 23, there were more breaches than any year prior. I can safely predict 24 will be the same. So that to me says we still need more innovation. We still need. And so my first role at Mandiant was I was the director of customer success, which is basically corporate speak for my team and I went out and fixed the stuff that we had screwed up, right? Because every organization screws things up, even Mandiant. And I love them. Don't get me wrong, but we all have bad days, and so that's when I first became what I like to call a student of what are the systemic reasons that companies are failing to defend. We all hear in the news about I'm just going to pick one at random. Equifax, for instance, that's a well-known breach. Right. Well reported in the media that they had some systems that weren't patched. Okay, great, but that's the surface level problem. Well, why weren't they patched? What is it that led to that, right? And that's where I'm coming from. And I really became a student of, well, how can we approach this differently? Can we solve some of these systemic shortfalls in a way that allows us as defenders to win? And couple that with I've gotten 99% of my success I attribute to working with people way smarter and way better than me, and hoovering up all of their great ideas and incorporating them into my style and et cetera. And there's just so much great work going on, but there's so much more that needs to be done yet, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, especially with, Mandiant has set some major standards. They were the ones who, I remember, released the APT report early on. Yep. That was the first report that when everyone else was kind of worried and concerned and afraid, they were the ones who really called out China for what they were doing, down to photographs of the building and pictures of people and things of that sort, by showing and putting forth in a really strong, clear report all the garbage that's been happening, right, in a larger perspective.
Yeah.
So that's a very rich and deep background to pull from. That's awesome.
I've gotten to, I've definitely had a lot of fun playing in some of the deep ends of the pool, so to speak, for sure.
So that gives you a very unique perspective.
There's other people that are better than I am, just to be clear on that, Will. But I wouldn't say it's that unique, but it's certainly not the most common perspective, for sure.
Right.
Well, dang it, just take my compliment. Take it.
Well, yeah.
But
no. You're going to make Tim blush so much, it's going to go all the way to the
No, the secret to my success is literally twofold, right? I'm very intentional to go. I've been in my career very intentional. I don't care about titles. Titles have never been what mattered to me. Things that matter to me are things like, well, what am I going to be doing? Who am I going to be working with? Et cetera, right? And probably the best example of this was I was so crazy fortunate. back in 2009, I was working leading security for Amway. 135 countries. We had about a 25-person team. It was a great experience. But I was bored. It was kind of mid-size pond. I think at the time they were about $9 billion revenue company. And many of us followed. At the time, Richard Baitlick used to have a really wildly popular blog. And he put up on his blog that he was looking to create I think his words were something like dream team at GE. And I talked to my partner and said, hey, I really want to throw my hat in the ring for this, right? But it would require us to move and et cetera. And Richard told me later that they got thousands of applicants, just because of the sheer popularity of his blog. And I landed one of those roles. Well, I landed one of those roles because in 2003, I had written a book on intrusion detection that Richard had read and remembered
And he was
when
like,
he saw my resume. Well, that got me to the short pile, and somehow I managed to convince them that I'm not a complete idiot, and got just a phenomenal opportunity, right? That was working with David Bianco, Ken Bradley, Bam Visser, Tyler Hudak. I mean, these are, in my opinion, some of the brightest minds in cybersecurity. And it was a chance to go from, that was my first opportunity to go from what I would call, big fish in a mid-sized pond to, the big pond, right? Mm-hmm. And see if I could swim there, and did okay. Like I say, lots of smart people, but my strength is I'm probably 80% at every discipline I'm insatiably curious. And so, I'm not remotely as strong as any of those individuals I named, but I was able to do quite a bit of what all of those individuals did, right? And which helps to create some glue in those situations. And in those days, we were fighting China significantly. GE is that was the heyday of APT1, PLA 61398, right? And for privacy reasons, I can't go into details, but it was really eye-opening to see the stuff that nation state was doing to, in that case, right? From my perspective, I actually lived in mainland China in the early 2000s did an expat rotation there. And, as a culture, as a people, I love that country. I absolutely love that country. But, their government, the average citizen has even less control over, their government than we do here in the States. And I think we all know how much power we have over our government here in the States individually. So, it's interesting days, and particularly when you've got nation states targeting individual companies, right? Yeah. That's just an unfair, one-sided battle, right? Yeah. Although just due to the sheer talent that we had on that team, we were able to eventually, get to a place where we were able to defend the organization against them, which was always a fun thing.
What are you seeing today as far as adversaries and what they're trying to do, and how can we move the needle? How can we make things better?
That's kind of close to what I was thinking, but mine was more about intrusion and detection. I was like, if you could rewrite intrusion and detection, what would it be today?
So I don't think there's not an easy answer for that question. Well, I think that's a really complicated question, right?
Perfect.
But I'll unpack a few things. I've certainly got no shortage of thoughts on it. One, let's step back a second. Kevin Mandia likes to call, in 2023, we had a tie for the record number of O days we saw deployed in the wild. Mandiant saw deployed in the wild, right? And in particular, there was one organization, the Defense Industrial Base customer, where we observed, we're pretty confident it was Chinese actors, deployed 3 0 days, 3 different 0 days in one intrusion. And then they also deployed a previously unknown malware framework that ran natively in the ESX hypervisor. So it could inject the malware into all of the guest VMs, right? And you think about that, just take a step back, the details aren't matter, but it's in context of, well, wait a minute, how in the world do we defend in a world where we've got attackers who are dropping O days like they were, bought on the corner store or something, which again, of course, is a much more complicated discussion. But long and short of it is my team at Mandiant put a lot of energy and thought into how do we think about approaching that problem. And there's a few things there. I've talked for a while about what I call the defender's advantage, and I didn't coin that term. That was coined by a gentleman at Microsoft that unfortunately slips my mind at the moment. It'll come back to me eventually. And there's this concept large concept out there that called the defender's dilemma, right, where we lose because the attacker only has to get it right, and we have to get it right 100% of the time as defenders. And I think that is thinking very too small about the problem, right? So I've done a bunch of talks on what is called the attacker's dilemma. How do we create the attacker's dilemma? How do we flip that the other way? Because here's the thing. Let's think about this really and how an intrusion plays out, right? It's Monday morning. Blood level in my caffeine system is too high, and I click on that malicious link, and now there's malware running in my laptop.
Oh no.
I'm an executive. There is nothing of interest to a cyber criminal in my laptop. They deploy ransomware and encrypt the contents of my laptop. Oh well, reinstall and restart, right? Because of course I'm not the actual target. And one of the things we innovated, we really started the core of this idea all the way back at GE under Grady Summers, but I continue to evolve that over time into a very specific framework that we used at Target and then again at Mandiant, where we created this context where, okay, well, that moment, that's a prevention failure, right? Our preventative controls have failed. But the breach, in my opinion, occurs when they complete their objective, right? That malicious actor has some sort of goal. They want to steal intellectual property so they can, get us to pay money, deploy ransomware, whatever their objective is. When they succeed in that, I would argue that's when the breach occurs. And when you think about the problem from that perspective, it changes everything potentially, right? Because let's start with a SOC or the Fusion Center or what have you, right? Well, as a defender, well, let me be clear here. So what I've got now is I've got a race condition. So I've got malicious actor in the environment trying to complete their outcome. As a defender who's trying to prevent a breach, then my goal is to contain that, to get them out of the environment before they complete that objective, right? So if that's the case, we're in that race condition, well, then we want to optimize for the defenders to win, right? So first and foremost, what I put to glass in the SOC is now very different because I don't care about attacks. I care about successful attacks. Right? Not that we don't want to know about attacks. That's super useful for our intel teams. But for the actual SOC analysts, and all of a sudden there went 80+%, 90% of the noise going to glass, which makes their jobs very different, right? and so on and so forth. I mean, there's, again, I could go on for hours just about this particular topic. But the key here is that we've got opportunities to approach these problems differently than how we are in most cases, in most security teams, in ways that drive different outcomes. Another good example of that would be, let's go to the other end of the spectrum. So at Mandiant, of course, once a quarter, as a CISO, I had to go to the board of directors. Well, what's our board of directors or our stakeholders really want to know? Am I doing my job appropriately? Is our cybersecurity team doing their job appropriately? How do they wrap around their heads around what is really the state, right? Audit committee on a board, that's their job, is to understand their oversight for us as defenders. And so I took a 3-page deck to them once a quarter. So the first slide was just, hey, here's some notable, interesting things that happened in the quarter, right? And so, Log4j dropped. That's pretty notable. Those sorts of things that they'd want to understand the larger risk landscape, for instance. Then my second slide was 4 KPIs that I'll come back to in just a second. And the third slide, I rotated, hey, here's our red team exercises for the last quarter, other things that I thought they would be interested in. So the 4 KPIs, what I've now taken to be calling outcome-driven security. I see so many decks by cybersecurity teams where they're going, our endpoint, our EDR agent health is 98%, and we're trying to get that to 100%, et cetera. Those all matter, right? I want to be clear, but if you think about the step back to the process of security, those are all the X side of the equation, right? Those are all the things that we as practitioners need to focus on to deliver the outcome. What are the outcomes we're trying to deliver? Well, we don't want malware running in our environment, right? That's the whole purpose. So let's measure that. How many prevention failures did we have over the course of the quarter? Second one I took to them was containment time, because that's an effective measurement of it's a measurement of the effectiveness of our detection and response capabilities. Third one I took at Mandiant was product security defects. How many product security defects did we have in code shipping to customers? Because my nightmare scenario as CISO at Mandiant, because Mandiant sells products for companies to, improve their cybersecurity, and O-Day in one of those feels like something we can't walk back from, right?
No.
That's a bad day.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one was what I called dynamic cyber defense, and that's essentially time value. So think Log4j example, right? Log4j dropped on that December Friday morning. I don't remember the date exactly.
I do. It was the first month I had started at Activision Blizzard King. And then
nice.
one of the very first problems I tackled was them having very quick access to an up-to-date, accurate log of their vendor connections and how to reach them.
Yeah. So Log4j drops. It's obviously, hugely impactful potentially, right? And so dynamic cyber defense, the core idea here is really simple. We don't know what the next Log4j is going to be, but we know there will always be another one.
Oh, yeah.
There will always be another significant vulnerability that we got to scramble to. So let's optimize processes for being able to respond to new significant risks to the organization. And so the clock starts the moment we know about the new risk, and the clock stops when we've mitigated that risk. And mitigated means we know we can't be exploited by it, we can detect it, right? The company, organization is safe from whatever this new threat is. I'm proud to say, Mandiant's, our team was able to mitigate Log4j in 4 hours and 38 minutes.
That's impressive. That's
is,
impressive. I don't have
like
some big study or stats on it, but for everybody else that I heard about after that, right?
Well, so I want a few things there, right, that I want to unpack. That was the team, not me,
No, I get that.
I want to be
No,
super
the
clear,
applause,
right?
you know.
Tim
I know,
refuses to take compliments.
Yeah, no, Tim. Actually, I want to be real clear. That wasn't you.
No.
I was
That
giving
wasn't me.
applause
That's right.
for the team that
That's
delivered
perfect.
that.
I just want to make sure that the team is getting credit for that, right?
No.
But that's the
team. Way to
power.
go.
So that's the power, though, of making clear to our folks what are we trying to deliver, right? The beauty of those outcomes is, on one end, board of directors, I was able to have really meaningful conversations with them about, so, hey, we had 9 prevention failures last quarter. Oh, well, what were they? What happened? Very much more qualitative discussions, but on the other end, then it was easy for the team because the team's got, oh, well, these are the 4 things we're being measured on as to our success, right? And then they get really creative, right? Because to do that, our red team had to jump into gear because there wasn't publicly available exploit code. So they figured out how to exploit it. Yeah. So that our defenders, we had another team running in parallel that was identifying where all the log4j was, so on and so forth. Well, as it turned out, we got lucky, and part of the reason we were able to get that fast is because we were able to confirm that every instance of a system with log4j was sitting behind our Cloudflare. So the team was able to develop a custom Cloudflare rule to block the exploitation. And frankly, in 7.5 hours after the exploit news dropped, we saw China trying to exploit it against us, right? So the urgency for a lot of this is real, but that's just one more example of how I think we as an industry can think about some of these problems and challenges differently. And for me as an engineer, I just always start at the end, right? Well, what does winning look like? What does success look like? What's the outcome we're trying to achieve? And then work backwards from there. How do we actually achieve it? Another third component there, I talked about the O-Day exploits. So from my perspective, O-Days are O-Days. If somebody drops an O-Day on us, they're going to get past our preventative controls. So I've done a few talks around the idea of, all right, well, how do we defend against these, what Kevin Mandia likes to call the apex attackers, right? These attackers that have access to these sorts of capabilities. And so I like to call it kind of a layered approach, right? And this is different from defense in depth, because defense in depth is a great concept we've always had in our industry. But layer 1 is all of our standard, preventative, detective, our IDS, our firewalls, our, EDR, all of those things that we think of as our tooling for defending our organizations. But then I would argue in a modern defense, we've got to have a second layer. And that second layer's job is to know when layer 1 has failed, right? That's its sole purpose. So what do we put into layer 2? We put into layer 2 things like, key systems we've analyzed and created baselines for what normal looks like. Right, so certain things like our ESX servers or et cetera, because the attackers use our systems differently than our legitimate users use them, and so we can't deploy. Matter of fact, we see a lot of the advanced attackers being very intentional about going through switches and routers and firewalls. Right, specifically because they know we can't deploy EDR, so that's simply a path around a lot of our detection that we rely on in many organizations. So we can't deploy EDR, but we can certainly know what normal looks like and outside of normal. But the biggest one I'm a huge proponent of is honey tokens. Now this is different than honeypots, still part of, because as defenders we have one advantage, or we should, over the attackers, in that we have home field advantage, right? We should know our environment like they can't. And go back to my first example, they've now popped onto my laptop what are the first thing they're going to do? They're going to dump my cache credentials, right? Because they're going to move laterally because they want to get to wherever it is that's got what they,
They came
they're
for.
looking to do. Exactly. So they dump my cache credentials, and there's 4 cache credentials in there. How do they know which one is real? At least if we've done a good job in how we've deployed those cache credentials, right? Because a common path we see in a lot of organizations is you've got your central help desk group, and all right, Tim's got a problem. He's not very good with IT, can't get his printer to work. And so what do? They remote into my laptop so they can fix my printer problem for me. Right. In the process, their administrative credentials, which are much more powerful than Tim's credentials, are now cached locally, right? But the only way they know how to know whether those system credentials work or not is to use them. Well, if 2 of those are tripwires and 2 of those are real, we've now got a 50% chance that they're going to immediately let our defenders know. And if they've only gotten to my laptop, well then, containing them is pretty darn trivial. And that's what I'm talking about when I say we can create an attacker's dilemma where we can seed our environment with so many tripwires. And the beauty of these honey tokens is that they're super easy. They have virtually no false positive, right? And all we need is for the attackers to bump into one of them, right? And we're off on the races. And so that's why I think we can reverse this thinking. And so all the way back, that was a way long-winded answer to your question, Will. But back to your thing, those are just a bunch of specific examples where I think we as defenders can think about these problems differently, and on the other side, achieve different outcomes. Right.
Well, my hopes and dreams is that there's somebody listening in on this that have never heard of anything like honey tokens, and now they're going to take it back, try it out, and be like, "This is great." And then it's going to open up that window of thinking that now they're looking for other places to put tripwires in place, and that's why we do this show, you guys.
Well,
the bad folks, they share their ideas with each other all the time. That's why they get better and faster than us. But we don't, because we're terrified with our tinfoil hats on that if we share information, somebody's going to use it to do bad things to us.
No, that's so not the right thinking, in my opinion.
It's not. And that's why
got to take their own approach.
That's what this whole show's about.
Right.
Yeah, well, the part that I love, right, because from a college perspective, thank you for that real quick masterclass for all my students. That was great.
Will's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to break this down and make a whole slideshow.
Well, so just want to refresh. This is Tim being hyper fortunate to have gotten to work with some of the most talented, brilliant minds in the industry, and I'm always looking for the next good idea to add to the toolbox, right? But secondly, I'm glad you brought up students, Will, because I think that's yet another key to this. I really do. I get to interact with a lot of my peers, right? Other CISOs, security teams, and I love that, right? Because none of us have a monopoly on good ideas. And that's all of this comes from one shape or another from all of those sorts of interactions. But what I also unfortunately see is a lot of same thing going on. We've got these quote unquote best practices in the industry, and I think some of them we need to really evaluate whether they should be best practices or whether they're just common practices. And why that's relevant to students in particular is we need fresh ideas in our industry, right? I encourage, if you're a student, you're going to get into an organization and you're going to almost definitely go, well, that's not how we do it. That's what you're going to hear. This is the best way to do it. This is how we've always. Please ask why.
So painful.
Well, why do we do it that way? Why is that the best way? What about this? And you got to be gentle in there, right?
Very. We talked about this in the pre-show. You have to be very gentle about this.
Yeah, because you know, a lot of these are good practices because they do deliver results, right? The old adage, we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. But see my earlier comments. At the end of the day, we're still losing more than we're winning, and so that clearly indicates to me that we need those fresh ideas. And the other thing that excites me about the students that are coming in is, frankly, our industry has a diversity problem. There's too many people that look like me. I try to be a nice guy, but if we're a healthy, thriving industry, there should be a much more diverse bunch of folks, and they aren't all white males, right? And what excites me most about the students is I see so much more diversity of the folks coming into the fresh classes, and all of our unique experiences give us different perspectives, and those different perspectives lead to different ideas, and different ideas lead to long-term we win, right? So
So here's a question: since this is obviously something that business needs across the country, from your perspective on the business side, how can we collaborate more heavily from the education side to the business side to help meet those needs?
Yeah. Ooh. Wow, Will, you ask all the complicated questions. That's a great question. I think it's multifaceted. One of the other shortfalls in our industry is we focus on the cybersecurity and not enough on understanding the business. Just one of those moments in time where this really came home for me was during my tenure at Target. I was a VP there, which is an officer in the company, so reported to the CIO there. And at the time, the CIO, Mike McNamara, my opinion, best CIO I've ever seen on the planet. His biweekly staff meetings were literally master classes in how to be a CIO. And what made him an amazing CIO is he was super deep technically, and he knew the retail industry like nobody I'd ever seen in IT. Right, I literally saw him on multiple occasions school our business partners on the business capabilities, right? And so, of course, as our leader, he made it clear that if you're a member of his staff, you are also going to be an expert in retail, and set that absolutely right. Set that expectation.
Yeah.
I think we as practitioners, no matter what industry we're in, we should take it upon ourselves. If it's not required of us, I need to be an expert at manufacturing. I need to be an expert at healthcare, whatever our industry is, because at the end of the day, security is just one facet of business. And like everything else in our lives, right? There's too much of anything is just not good. Too much of security is not good. Too much of, exercise is not good, for goodness sakes, right?
Thank you.
Balance
I'm so glad.
is critically important, right? It leads to so much better outcomes, right?
Yeah.
Resiliency, the business systems have to be running, so on and so forth. And so why this is relevant to your question, Will, is that I see two big things that a lot of fresh students are missing. Is one, an understanding of how cybersecurity fits into the larger ecosystem of an organization, and two, soft skills, communications, all of these sorts of things. So I was super lucky. Had no idea. This is 17-year-old Tim, right? I'm in school, math, computer science, double major, right? What am I going to minor in? On a whim, I chose drama, little knowing that would be the actually useful thing in my life, right?
It is.
It totally, right? Because directing classes are just classes in leadership.
Yep.
Improv classes are classes in teaching you to think on your feet, so on and so forth, right? Meanwhile, right, this is the mid 80s, so this was COBOL, Fortran, really useful stuff. I couldn't do a derivative or an integral to save my soul at this point, because of course I've not touched any of that stuff since college. And that communications foundation, literally for the first decade of my career, I didn't even get it. Finally, the light bulb moment went off, mainly because I have an amazing partner. But, I'm like seeing I'm getting promotions, but it's like, wait, but Sally's a better engineer than I am. But, of course, later looking back, well, I was able to communicate better than Sally was and help the leadership understand the different pieces, parts, and communicate what we were doing, why we were doing, et cetera, right? And of course, as your career progresses, I did a talk for a bunch of college students, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago on the importance of soft skills in your career. And, early career, it was maybe 10%, 15%, right? Something like that. Then mid-career was probably closer to 50-50, versus my technical skills. At this point, my technical skills are technically irrelevant. Not that I don't keep my hands dirty just because I love it, but I could completely let all of my technical skills atrophy and still be very successful in my career with appropriate communications. But the key there is the sooner folks realize, because I use the word skill intentionally, because like anything else, right? I've got friends who are, Lori, my partner, she's a naturally gifted communicator, right? Her innate level of capability is huge. That's not the case for me, but because I recognize the importance, I put intentionality into developing those skills, just like the rest of my technical skills and other things. And you do that over the course of a career and a lifetime, and slowly but surely I get better.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I like the idea of bringing a prerequisite of a drama class.
Please. I love that so much.
But
Josh actually was a theater major. I was in choir and orchestra for a long time, so just more of that performance stuff. But being able to listen to your team and work together and harmonize beautifully, if I can be so punny, stuff like that.
No,
And
man.
there's some other really great effective communicators, and I know that us as a cybersecurity industry, we love to beat up all the marketing and salespeople, but I'm telling you right now, the salespeople are real good at soft skills. Okay, because they've heard no so many times that they start to like very gently spoon feed it instead, and they're like, just take a little taste.
Just try this. Just try. Look at this. This is a new flavor.
Yeah,
Try this.
They're great. So don't ever disparage those guys and their soft skills. If you want to go learn something, go hang out with your vendors more often, or just instead of thinking that those calls are a waste of time for you to take and learn about whatever blinky light button they want to, instead study how they deliver a pitch. Because you might have to sell your idea to somebody else, and that salesperson is real good at pitching stuff.
The issue is they're good at pitching it to you and your team, because then you're also seeing like an issue there.
Why not?
Well, so therein though lies the problem, Rachel. So I agree with that in one respect, but not all folks are created equal. So
no,
just like
they're not. No, not every salesperson, but like your favorite one, the one that you notice that you listen to more often than the rest of them. Maybe take notes from that one.
Okay.
That's more fair.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying every salesperson. We all know the horrible salespeople. There's a reason why there's a stereotype around salespeople suck, right? Like there's a reason. It's because we've all run into one.
I'm very pragmatic. About a third of my career has been on the vendor side and 2/3 on the practitioner side. Well, on the vendor side, if the salespeople aren't successful at their jobs, then we don't eat. So
right,
hey,
you want them to be successful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's where you look at first. You're like, hey, excuse me, do you guys need some help right there? Because I like paychecks and I want them to keep coming. Yeah, no, those are the people you want to help out rather than just be like, oh, they suck and turn away. So that's fair point. Fair point. Thank you for helping me clarify that part.
One team, Rachel.
I like it. It's good. It's good stuff. Levy, you haven't been able to get a word in edgewise because me and Will are just like, we love you so much.
I know you guys you're fanning over here. Like, I mean, I agreed to come because I thought we were going to talk about nerd stuff. But
sorry. Oh, look, I brought my miniature. Does that count?
I'm happy to talk nerd stuff too, Levy.
I'm down for it. I love talking about D&D, and I tried to talk to you guys pre-show, but somebody's software doesn't like me today.
Because I own this software. Do you think if I own this software?
Yeah,
really?
No. A really quick back to something that came up earlier. I agree with what Will's comment was on YouTube about it's a good sign of a leader to make sure recognition gets shared. So I wanted to say that live for people who may not have seen that comment. Yay. And the other one, ooh, echo. One of my favorite things to do with new people to a team, especially people who have come from an education track and then jumped into the field, is make them write SOPs. Because no one likes writing SOPs.
No, they don't.
But the people who are the newest will ask all the good questions. And the people who are the oldest are just going to write down what they do. And so you lose that ability of, why do we do this when now the standard's this thing over here instead? And so I think that kind of aligns with that. How do you get the education track into the whole like business track, cybersecurity track? Because
I like that. That's good.
That's
great, Levy. I couldn't agree with more. That's a great idea.
People hate it. I love it.
Kim's like, yes, thank you.
I'm gonna take that.
Now a good idea.
It's my idea now. That's fine with me. Share it.
Taking notes.
If we spread the idea so it becomes less of a hassle for me to argue about it.
Yeah, that's why going to conferences and hanging out with your peers is important, guys. And going to make friends. Go make friends. You're gonna get all kinds of good, juicy tidbits from each other. Yeah. It's gonna be awesome.
So, what's the best way to get the education and business collaboration going? We have an advisory team and all that, and our advisors work to help create our curriculum.
Yeah,
but I think it could be so much more. What are your thoughts?
Oh, goodness.
I'm laughing at Steve.
Well, I think there's a ton of folks out there who are absolutely passionate about helping develop the next generation, right, Will? So certainly find those folks and leverage them for that. I think one of the most interesting flip sides to that is often a lot of businesses have preconceptions about what we do and how we're going to approach them from prior experiences, shall we say, folks that have come before us. And so one of the more interesting challenges I have found, that I say interesting because I just didn't expect it until I ran into it so many times, was reassuring the business that, no, I'm not here to just say no. I'm not here to just throw a bunch of controls over the wall at you and expect you to comply with them. I'm here to help you be successful. And of course, it's not simply saying that. We've got to demonstrate it. Again, I'll give you another specific example. When I first took over CISO at Mandiant, the application security program was running what I would call the old school, I think, non-functional model. And that's where we run a bunch of tools, right? Our SAST, our DAST, our IAST, our yada, yada, yada.
All our asks.
Exactly. we cut and paste those findings and open them as tickets for the product engineering team. That is absolutely not productive for anyone.
Yeah.
Not productive for us. One, we could write a script to replace the people who are copying and pasting. But more importantly is, let's take a specific example. Cross-site scripting. You're right, one of the most common errors that crop up. It's a simple issue with some unvalidated code, and the scanner will probably detect 150 to 250 instances of cross-site scripting from one offending line of code. So our job, I would argue, as defenders is to analyze the code, find that offending code, open one ticket for the one thing, right? And say, by the way, here's what's wrong with the code, why it's producing this vulnerability and what this vulnerability means. Here's some simple ways to fix it. Now, the product engineering teams need to own the fix, right? But when we as a security program function come to them with solutions and not just problems, it changes the dynamics of the relationship, right?
It does, because now you're helpful. Now you're helpful.
Now we're helpful, right? Because there is no engineer, application engineer, right, product engineer,
right,
that wants to ship insecure code. That's not what they're trying to do. They're just trying to get the code done and out. They want quality. That's part of their job requirements, right?
Right.
So it's purely a learning gap if they're having this fault in it. So they're going to appreciate closing that. And oh, by the way, this went from, oh, I've got 4 hours this week to analyze all of these findings that the security team threw over the wall to us, to, oh, you know what? Here,
put the fix
I'm going to fix that now.
Because they gave it to me, right? Yeah, they were like, here's the problem, but also here is how you fix it. Now fix it.
Right? So now all of a sudden we're partners, right? Our job is to help them be secure, right? But how do we do that so that they can go fast? That's just one of many examples that how we as security teams need to, but that also partly comes from understanding the business, understanding what they're trying to accomplish, et cetera, right? And so again, I'm not trying to dodge your question. It's just everything is so inextricably intertwined, right? So what we've got to find is business partners who've had those kind of experiences that can go represent that, to them. And there's very few, senior leaders in my experience, or at least successful senior leaders that don't have solid communication skills. That's a pretty non-negotiable, skill set to be successful, at least as a senior leader, right? So,
yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. We're gonna have to start wrapping up, though. Great seeing you, Tim.
No,
a minute. Look, Tim.
Well, thanks for the invitation.
I refuse. No wrapping up. We're just gonna keep going.
Yeah, no, we're just gonna keep. We can't do that, but we can do this again, right? As long as.
Oh, absolutely.
I have more hats, Tim. You have to come see the other hats.
We don't have to.
Fair enough, Levy.
We can wait till sometime.
People want to hear from way more than just my ideas. There's lots of other good ideas out there.
Later, we're gonna see other people, but later we can do this again. It'll be fine.
Sure.
Oh, and look, I'm gonna put you out on Front Street. You ready for this, Tim? Look, if you guys want to go connect with Tim, he's got a QR code that I made for him that he was unaware of that leads to his LinkedIn site or his LinkedIn profile. Sorry, that's where that goes.
It's all good. All good. I'm a huge fan of connections on LinkedIn.
Yeah, but don't be respectful. This man's got a lot.
The big caveat is if you're obvious salesperson only connecting to sell me something, then I might decline your invite. Yeah. Other than that, I will probably accept your invite.
Yeah,
it works honestly really fair.
Don't do that. And he's an excellent conversationalist, if you couldn't tell. I saw somebody else was like, great guest today, giving me kudos for how awesome Tim is. I'm like, no, that's not how that works. Tim's just awesome. Like,
no. I do okay. I'm blessed is what I am. I that's how I look at it, right? I've been incredibly unfortunate. Now, of course, some of this was intentional, and I encourage everybody that direction, right? I think sometimes we get maybe a little hyper focused on career pathing, and I think, take the long view there is what I've done is, like the job at GE, that was actually a lateral. I didn't get a pay raise, etc. But what I got was exposure to some just brilliant people that I got to work with and learn from. And all of a sudden I'm in the deep end of the pool dealing with nation states and etc. Right? That was absolutely a watershed moment in my career.
Yeah.
That I took specifically because I wanted to go work with crazy talented folks like that. So I could hopefully up my game in the process, right?
The team makes it half the time.
Totally. Couldn't agree more.
That's why I keep coming to the show.
Aw, thanks. I love it. It's good. It's good fun. Always. We're probably going to do it again next week. So you guys got to come and follow the things. Let's see. Secure Nation. There's a Secure Nation LinkedIn thingy. So follow that. If you want to find out more about what it is that Will and all of his super hyper cool folks are doing over at Pima Community College, that's the one
We
you
love
want.
them.
We do love them. We love them very much. And
They rock. They really do. Our students are incredible.
and Will, you guys now have a wait list, right?
Yeah.
I'm on the wait list. I'm waiting for responses.
Yeah. There's a wait list for students to get into your program.
Yeah, we if we had 100 programs like Will's across the country, we'd be having very different conversations about our successes.
Awesome.
Trying to, dude. Trying to.
I know you are. I know you are.
This is where I so much appreciate all these extra forums, and thank you so much, Rachel, for what you do, because I kid you not, folks, this what had masterclass elements in it all the way through. And thank you so much for what you do, Tim, and thank you so much for sharing that insight to all those that are starting to get into the industry and trying to form their careers. It brings the humanity to all of that and gives an organizational viewpoint of your job. Folks, when you're getting into your jobs, you're not just a cog in the machine. You want to have the overall viewpoint of the organization and what you're doing and why, because IT is really about meeting the needs of people in the business, not about making the machines work as best they can.
That's right.
Oh,
yeah, the machines are for a purpose, right? Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more, Will. Yeah.
Will, that was a great.
What you want to find are leaders that believe in investing in their folks, right? There's a lot of them out there. Those are the folks that we get to work for, in our career that help us all be successful, right? So
yes,
yeah. Those are my favorite kind of leaders. Those are my favorite.
Mine too.
All right, guys, we really are going to go. We got to go. We got to stop it. We got to stop. We love you all. Have a fantastic weekend. You guys reach out, connect with everyone that you see here. If we're not connected already, that's weird. You should definitely click. And don't just do the follow thing with me. Like if you want to actually talk to me, hit the little 3 dots on your LinkedIn thing. There'll be a drop down and then the option to connect shows up. Do that. Anyhow, we'll see you guys next time around. Thank you so much for grabbing a cup and circling up with us. Have a great
friends.